For the first time in more than 5.5 years, we finally tonight have a few new answers to a question that has loomed over Indiana and over the town of Delphi. Who killed Abby Williams and Libby?
From the end of the bridge to, you got to go through. Now, I believe that the bodies were found about
born from a family's grief and determination. In April of 2020, Army soldier Vanessa Guillen went missing while stationed at one of the largest military installations.
That little music in the background that goes, "Don't be suspicious, don't be suspicious."
Right.
Knew about it or was there. He's as guilty as the person who committed.
Chilling details in the arrest of a suspected serial killer caught before he could strike again.
They dropped the ball, man. Like they said, he went AWOL, and that he was a deserter, and nobody went to look for him.
Today is not a day to celebrate, but the arrest of Richard M. Allen of Delphi on 2 counts of murder.
Like I said, we're going back. We were asked last time to kind of talk about the food, the grub truck video, and kind of give our perspective of it. The press release from the police department, it indicated that they're still trying to put pieces together from that night. Does that worry you at any point or at any bit that they're still trying to put those pieces together?
It's been over 5 weeks since little Kaylee Anthony vanished. Her mother, Casey, has been arrested for lying to police. She's being held without bail.
Hey, greetings from the year 3000. It still sucks. This is Philip J. Fry, and you're listening to the Drunken Turkey Show, your one-stop for this sort of thing. Hit that button, like and subscribe. You know what to do, just like every other podcast.
Just like every other podcast. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Drunk Turkey Show. I'm Daniel. Today it's just going to be me, guys. Big Blue's got some work to do tonight, as I think he's going to be kind of missing on Mondays as well. I think Blue's going to be just kind of tuning in on Fridays, sometimes every now and then on Wednesdays. But it was great to see him last week, and we hope he'll be on back soon. I want to thank everybody that's tuning in, all our members, our mods, our subscribers, those who have not yet subscribed but are tuning in. Thank you, and I would hope you would consider subscribing. We'd appreciate that. So today we're going to talk about two different cases or two different situations that are currently going on out there, and I believe it's in South Carolina. There's a young lady who recently passed away. Her name is Mica Miller, and there's been a lot of speculation as to the means and in the manner in which she passed. There's been a lot of speculation that her recently separated husband may have had something to do with it. Her recently separated husband is named John Paul Miller, and there's quite a bit of red flags and a lot of things that are going on in this case that make you think that perhaps he may have had a hand in this. However, there was just some, I believe there was a ruling or a manner of death that has just been released, and we'll go into that. Let's bring it up, and we'll look into also some of the things that have been said about the husband and things like that. So without further ado, let's look into this. This is from, let me see. Let's go to this one. This is from ABC 15 News. Mica Miller's cause of death released by NC Medical Examiner. The cause of death has been released for the 30-year-old Mica Miller of Myrtle Beach amid an ongoing investigation. According to the Robeson County Medical Examiner, Dr. Richardson Johnson Miller died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Dr. Johnson said, based on the nature of the wound, that it is consistent with a self-inflicted gunshot wound, and it was not in the back of the head as been speculated. So it appears that it is going to be something that was self-inflicted. I know that the pastor had used her husband. I think he's been released of duty as well as a pastor for now. I don't know if that's a long-term thing or not. But there was speculation that she was shot in the back and that there was more to the story. I had seen, let me pull this up on the Twitterverse. Where was it at? That apparently not only did he not only were there signs that this was self-inflicted, but she had called 911 apparently and was on 911 at some point, and they had verified that she was alone. But that doesn't mean that this guy, didn't, I guess, I don't want to say he didn't push her to this, because I don't know who this person is. And, I know a lot of people are looking at this guy, and he has, I think, quite a bit of a history. And so I'm just kind of looking into it for the first time. We're going to look at some timeline of events. This is from Robbie Harvey off of Twitter. It says February 4th, Pastor John Paul preaches at a sermon on Korah and Moses on how it's wrong to rise against religious leaders. February 23rd, Pastor John Paul files for spousal support. So apparently him and his wife are just kind of going through some things, and he ends up preaching about talking about another pastor when it kind of seems like he's referring to his own situation, and there being problems with this pastor's relationship, some infidelity issues, and how that pastor was willing to, go for a divorce, but because divorce is not in the Bible, and he decided to stick it through, and was going through a tough time. And then after she had passed, he started talking about, he had a sermon, and he was acting normal, telling jokes. And at the very end of it, he kind of just says, and by the way, my wife has passed. She it was self-induced, and that she had some mental issues. And so he was degrading her, so to speak, even after her passing. And there was a lot of red flags there. I even took that as a red flag. There's an investigation going on, and this person is inputting himself into the investigation by saying that she had mental, health issues, trying to basically put out a reason for why she committed, why she took her own life. So, I think that there was a lot of red flags there. Apparently also he went on a date shortly afterwards. He also said something to the effect while he was on sermon that he was, wants to find a hot wife that loves Jesus or something to that nature. In fact, let's kind of listen to it. This is some of his past sermons, and this is also from Robbie Harvey. We'll listen to what he has to say about this, and we'll pause and comment on it.
In weeks leading up to the death of Mica Miller, Pastor John Paul Miller spoke on a regular basis negatively about his wife. Take a listen.
When my wife went in the hospital, I looked at her phone and I counted over the past 2 years, 18 people who would text her and said, if you ever want to talk about your husband, you can talk to me and say anything and I'll keep it confidential. Why the heck does somebody want to hear what somebody else says about their spouse? And 2 of those 18 were men. I thought, what? And I was thinking when I read that, I thought, Mark Cassidy, he's one of our elders here, and Jackie, she oversees our New Testament discipleship. Could you see Mark calling another woman and saying, I just want to tell you some things about my wife I don't like? Or could you see Jackie calling a woman or a man, either one? No, if someone wants to call you and say bad things about somebody else, that's a demon talking to you. And the only way to respond is with the word of God.
Going through 2 years.
So he went through 2 years worth of her text messages while she was in the hospital. That's a little bit controlling. That's a sign of somebody who's controlling, somebody who's insecure. Those are some red flags. The other red flag thing that I had found out and discovered while looking into this was, I believe he was about 30 when he met her, and she was about 15 or 14 at the time. I think she was some sort of like a junior member of the church, and she assisted, and he was somebody of position of the church. And so there's been a question about, how they started their relationship and things like that.
Worth of messages on his wife's phone, the pastor seems frustrated that people would reach out to talk to her about him. And the questionable remarks, whether directly or indirectly, didn't stop there.
Pride and mental illness, or I think mental illness is probably the most horrible thing we can face in our bodies, and pride is probably the most horrible thing we can face in our spirits. And here's why. When you're mentally ill, it's the one sickness you have that you don't know you're sick. And you have to trust people around you, because you're saying, no, they're lying to me. They're telling me I need medicine. I don't need medicine, because saying the sick is your mind, and your mind is what you need to realize that you're sick. One day I'm going to preach about getting rich, strong, healthy, and finding a hot wife that loves Jesus. That's what I'm going to do. I'm just kidding. That was wrong. I told you I shouldn't be here today. I told you. Last year, my wife, they went to Africa, had a wonderful trip, amazing trip. And she came back with the idea to start a school in Africa. And 6 weeks ago, she goes in the hospital, gets out, and just leaves, just completely leaves me, leaves everything, drains the bank account, and goes. Guess what? While you're talking bad about me out there, I'm building a school in Africa for over 100 kids to be able to be fed.
And the pastor makes it very clear to his church on multiple occasions that every time someone rises up against him, God blesses him.
3 years ago, the elders walked out on me and got so upset about stuff. The city of Myrtle Beach called us, and they said, you guys just won the Best House of Worship Award, #1 church in all of Myrtle Beach. I thought, I didn't even know that. I said, how's that happen? They said, we phone call, we poll people all through the community. We look on social media, we see what people are saying, all these different things. And y'all got first place. Oh, that's so cool. 2 years ago when we started the school and people started giving me all kinds of problems and headache and things behind the scenes that had nothing to do with the school at all, got upset, stabbed me in the back. Myrtle Beach called us again. Guess what? Y'all got Best Church of the Year 2 years in a row. That's amazing. You can't keep me down. You're putting fuel in my plane. And guess who's not going to be in the plane? My enemies. You have to take a taxi if you want to get there. And I pray for you, my enemies. I pray that you come to a place of repentance. I pray that you realize you're not hurting me. You're hurting the kingdom of God.
And in this sermon,
that part, I'll be honest, I don't see anything weird about that. But the other part before that, about the mental illness and attacking his wife during that portion of the sermon, that's uncalled for. Obviously, he's going through some things. He probably shouldn't even be up there, talking in front of people with going through those things. It don't help, but you say some things. There's what's his name? Zach Bryan. There's a song, I Remember Everything. Go check it out. In that song, there's a lyric that says, strange words come out of a man, a broken man, a man with a broken mind, or something of that nature. And, it's a lot of this could be that, but he's also, like I said, he's got a history. He's got a lot of other things going on. There's a lot of red flags here. That last part about the enemies and coming back and forth. I don't know. I've heard that in many churches before.
The pastor preaches that it's wrong for people to rise up against religious leaders.
So long story short, Korah gets 2 other guys that are leaders in the church with him. Those 3 leaders then get 250 Israelite leaders, and they begin to rebel against the leadership of Moses. You say, what did Moses do wrong? That's not the point. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. The matters is the hierarchy of how God had it set, and they're rising up against him because Satan loves to use disgruntled people. If you knew every single thing about me, everything I've done wrong, you probably wouldn't be here today. You probably wouldn't want to be my friend.
And finally, and possibly the most important one, the sister of Mica Miller made this Facebook post on March 17th. It says, I was sitting in church today when I received a text message. Usually I don't check my phone and I keep it on silent. But with everything going on with my sister, I've made it a point to try and keep an eye on it for fear of her safety due to others' behaviors towards her. To no surprise, it was a message about what was said from the pulpit today in Myrtle Beach at her church. I have so much sadness that someone could take the position that was hopefully given to them by God and use it for their own benefit, abusing God's gift of free will. Though she doesn't speak specifically about what was said in the message, here's what I believe she was talking about.
A friend of mine that's a pastor called me last week, and one day on a Monday, his wife told him that he was the greatest husband in the world, that she loved her life, and she was so appreciative. The very next day, something happened, and then she left. And he didn't know where she went. She just left. Left all of her things, left everything she had, everything she worked for, everything. He didn't know what to think. He had no idea what was going on. So he hired a third-party service to find her and see where she was living and that kind of stuff. And they did. And last week they turned in all of their evidence to his lawyer, and he discovered that she had left him for one of his staff members, a young man that he had trained and to learn how to preach. That he had shared his pulpit with him. A young man who the pastor had paid to go to Bible college, gave him a job. He worked hand in hand with the pastor. And in one fleeting moment, the pastor lost his wife and his good friend all at the same time. When he saw the information over the lawyers, he started to throw up. Just throw up. One trash can, second trash can, a third trash can, and he just started to dry heave. He couldn't believe what he saw was the most horrible image and worst thing you could ever imagine. The lawyer drew up the divorce papers. The lawyer told him and said, you have everything you need now. You can be divorced in 3 months. And you'll never have to see her again. You won't have to give her a dime. There's far more than enough information to take care of everything. The pastor said, give me the papers, draw them up. They got all the paperwork ready. They put the pen in his hand, and he just couldn't sign the paper. They said, but don't you see everything, and don't you understand? And He called a lot of the elders, and they supported. If he wanted to leave her, just leave her. This is it. For some reason, he just couldn't do it, and so he went home and he wrote her a letter. And all he said was, "I forgive you for what you've done, and I already forgive you for whatever you're going to do. Whenever you want to be restored, just call. And if you want a divorce, you'll have to leave me, because the Bible says, I'll never leave you nor forsake you." He left. And the hardest thing he's ever had to go through, he can't hear from God very clearly. He doesn't know what God wants him to do. He knows that she's not herself and doesn't know how to handle it or how to respond. The rage, the rejection, the relationship, it's all there. And so if you get a chance, pray that his heart does not remain angry or upset, because it's destroying him.
And for those who say he may not have been talking about Mica in that clip, take a listen to this.
This is the worst sermon I've ever preached in my whole life. I can't stand it. I just want to give the altar call and quit now. One day, listen, if you ever want to know what I'm going through in life, it's always about what I'm preaching about. God is so good to do that every single time.
Remember, the only one to announce that Mica took her own life was her husband. Police have not.
Well, not at the time of this, but it appears that has been what police have said. But yeah, I mean, yeah, clearly he probably should not have been talking in front of people or anything like that. Obviously, she took, I mean, I don't know. According to the doctors there, the medical examiner, it seems like it was a self-inflicted wound. Now, could he have had some kind of hand in why she ended up doing it? Possibly. I don't know. I don't know their relationship that way. It seems like there was a lot of red flags. It seems like there was a lot of things going on. She even made the statement that if she had a bullet in her head, it wasn't, from her own, which made things very more suspicious, right? She stated that it would have, she alluded it would probably be from him. Let's see. But yeah, this is Robbie Harvey on Pastor John Paul Miller and his talks negatively about his deceased wife. And so, like I said, the update also is that he's been suspended amongst from the church. Well, that's the way the news reads it. It states here that the notice states that Miller is released for a time of healing, counsel, and guidance pursuant to our governing instrument. And so he's not going to be preaching anytime soon there at the church. So crazy situation, man. I know a lot of people ended up blaming him. Here was a letter that he wrote. I wanted to read to you guys. So this is supposedly an email that he had written, or according to Andrew Faincher, vlogger, mainstream defector. He states that an email supposedly written by John Paul Miller to Mica Miller ahead of her suicide. A cause of death confirmed by Robeson County Medical Examiner Dr. Richardson Johnson. It says here, "Hey Mica, I hope you're doing well. I'm ready to be done and move on and heal and find a first lady who won't treat me the way you are." So he's already sending a dig at her as well, even in the first paragraph. And again, I don't know anything about what happened. I mean, it seems like he's alluding that she had some sort of infidelity outside of the marriage relationship, based on what he's preaching, and that's coming from him. I have no idea if that's true or not, but if there's any truth to that, there's going to be some, anger issues there on both sides. So it says here, I find it weird also he calls her first lady. That's odd, but I don't know. Maybe just the way the guy talks. He says, I really hope you do great things. I was willing to do anything. I even had the amazing desire to have kids since you're not on meds. And I want to apologize for the flowers and fruit. It was already paid for to last until your birthday. Feel free to give it all away. I sent that to you before I found out all the things that I have recently found out about you and what you've done. You disgust me. So again, kind of alluding to that there was some sort of infidelity. I'm assuming that's what he is basically blaming the fall of the relationship on. and he's still putting, taking digs at her in this situation here. So please, let's meet soon and be divorced and let this nightmare be over for me. I am enjoying all the African missions, and Pastor Jumba and all the pastors' wives are so excited for what we're doing. We expect 120 kids at our first semester and have about 10 to 20 people going this time, including Kristen and Tom Winslow and Becca and Jonathan, etc. And I need to move on ASAP. I need a woman who will respect me and love me and be worthy of all that is being a first lady is about. Kind of weird. Real weird. Not gonna lie. And, this person here on the right says, appears to have been written in the days before her birthday, which is March 7th. Interesting timing, since we know she filed a police report on March 11th about her tires and tracking device, which is true. There was apparently a tracking device and what do you call it? Let's see, I pull it up right here. This is from News 13. GPS tracker found in car of Myrtle Beach woman weeks before her passing in Robeson County. Police reports allege harassment. So obviously there was some things going on. And if let's just say that maybe she did have some, maybe a mental health issue, him stalking her, following her, causing all these issues is definitely no help. And it's definitely can probably cause a lot more harm than anything else, especially somebody who's suffering. And it seems like where I've read a couple of things, I think it was like on Facebook and stuff like that, where there were some friends of hers that reached out and that she was, I guess, nervous that she wouldn't be accepted in any other church or things like that. And, or afraid that she wouldn't be. And he probably put a lot of fear into that as well. He probably instilled that. So I know this is it's gonna be a touchy subject for a lot. This guy in the end, he didn't physically do this, but did he play a role in it? It's possible, as far as the mental aspect of it, but only only a psychologist and therapist and people looking into the evidence and stuff like that will be able to determine that. But it is a sad situation. Canadian True Crime Buff says this guy makes me sick. Yeah, like I said, there's a lot of red flags there, and I find it suspicious. I find why everybody thought, he may have had something to do with it. I see why, everybody thought that, but coroner said it was self-inflicted, and unfortunately, in a situation like that, I don't know if you can prove anything against him. You can see all these things that he's done, and we can all say that, yeah, that probably attributed to why she did what she did. But in trial and stuff like that, it's going to be very difficult. Because I know there's a lot of folks that have put out there that maybe perhaps the family will sue him or something, for wrongful death or things like that. Now, I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if that's going to be something that can end up, that'll work. I don't know. That's a lawyer question, but we'll see. All righty, guys, let me pull this down. We're going to go into our next topic of discussion. Well, does anybody have any questions about anything or any comments that maybe I missed on this? Because I'm sure there's a lot. I didn't go through a lot of it. I was starting to, and then the cause of death came up, and at that point, it really wasn't, it wasn't the ex-husband. So I didn't want to go too far deep into that and accuse somebody of something. You know what I mean? All right, so let's see. Sirius says, I don't see how he got anyone into his congregation. Yeah, he seems like a smooth talker. You know what I mean? And so, right now, he was going through that issue with his wife and everything else, right? Who's to say that before, when he was starting his congregation and when he was building up his stuff, he wasn't in that situation, so he wasn't preaching like that. So He probably talked a lot of people into his side, but it sounds like at least 18 people kind of saw past it, and they reached out to his wife and, or at least saw some things that concerned them for at least a shorter period of time. And it ended up being something that should have been looked into, I think. What if he made her groggy and then shot her, placed the gun in her hand? With GSR, won't transfer. See, the only thing about that, CGK, is that apparently she had contacted 911. She was on the phone with 911 prior to her taking her own life. And they were able to determine that she was in the vehicle by herself, or she was by herself. So I don't think that that's going to end up being something. I'm fairly positive by the sounds of it that it was something that was self-inflicted. However, was she pushed to this? I mean, was there some mental and physical abuse? She talks about physical abuse. There was a situation where she brought up, I think there was a video where she mentioned, in the Bible, it says that God doesn't like divorces, but how does he feel about abuse? Right. So kind of alluding that maybe perhaps she was being abused. I think he had some sort of history of domestic abuse. I'm not entirely sure. I think Grizzly True Crime was talking about that. I didn't get a chance to catch up on everything, but I believe she had brought up his history, and there had been some there. So, yeah. Oh, no problem, CJK. Yeah. So I think there's something there for that, right? Was there abuse, mental, physical, emotional? Was there the threat of her not being able to find another congregation to go to and to heal through the church? And those things are very valid points. Sally Mae says, I don't believe she did. I mean, I don't know. I think that there's a lot of times that people will do things that a lot of people didn't think that they would do or could do or were capable of doing. And it's not just the self-inflicted stuff. I mean, people get arrested for some heinous crimes and their family members had no idea. Best friends or coworkers are stunned by it. And then it goes all the way down to like self-inflicted stuff. I've had like favorite singers and stuff that have committed who have taken their own lives, and some of their family members talk and show videos about how they seem happy the days leading up to it. So, it's a touchy subject. It's a subject that a lot of people don't understand, including myself. I don't. And so, yeah. If this guy had some sort of like abuse mentally, physically, that, led to her also attributing to her mental positioning where she was at that moment, then I think that there should be some sort of justice, for her for that, if that makes sense. I wonder if she left a note. I know not everyone leaves notes though. Yeah. I think the other thing that was confusing or suspicious was the fact that it was by a gun. That's not as common when it comes to like females. Statistically, it's usually not the way. Let's see. Coercive control. Yeah, that's quite possible. Yeah. Yeah. So let's transition to Delphi. In Delphi, the man accused of the 2017 killings of the two teenagers in Delphi was booked into Allen County today on Monday. Defendant Richard Allen has a pretrial hearing tomorrow morning, Tuesday, at the Allen County Courthouse and is booked in the local county jail until then. The 51-year-old is charged with murder of the double homicide case of 13-year-old Abigail Williams and 14-year-old Libby German, who were both found dead in February 2017 near the Monhan High Bridge in Delphi. Tuesday's hearing in Fort Wayne is because a special judge, Fran Gull, is presiding over the case. Jury selection is set to begin May 13th in Allen County. The trial will be then held in Carroll County Courthouse and is scheduled to last through the end of May. It's coming up close, y'all. I think that the bad thing about this is I don't think it's going to be like aired or anything like that. And there's a lot of questions. And this hearing that they're going to have tomorrow, I believe, is referencing some of the evidence that the defense can use. Now, I personally think that Richard Allen may have had a hand in this case. I think there's more to the story. I think Elvis Fields is somebody that needs to really be looked into a lot more, right? But, you know, at the end of the day, he puts himself there. And if you go and look at the video of the guy on the bridge, yeah, you can't see that it's him, but you can tell that the person that's on the bridge is very short. And if you look at the sweatshirt, the arms, especially between the elbow and to the wrist, it's very scrunched up. Those are usually indications of somebody that is shorter, not taller, with longer arms. Also, the same can be said with the shirt that's underneath the jacket. It's very long on that person, comes very low. Now, when you are purchasing things in from Walmart or Sam's or any of these places that are not tailor made for you, you're stuck between sizes, right? And so if you're a chubbier guy and you need to wear a large width-wise, well, they don't make like a large but shorter, because he's short. They just make a large. And so his large are probably going to go lower. And if you look, he has a brownish shirt underneath that goes pretty low on his thigh. And if you look at the bottom of his feet, you can see where the pant legs at the bottom are folded up. All those things are indications of somebody who's pretty short, not somebody that's taller. Usually, if you have somebody's taller, you might have a high water in the pant. You might have the wrist exposed more, or the non-scrunchy effect on the arm. So those type of things, when it comes to the sweater, so those type of things indicate to me that it's a shorter dude. And based on the time that he arrived and everything else, kind of really aligns with him being the guy on the bridge. Now, could there have been more people involved? 100%. I think that might play a role in this situation. I think that there may have been other people there. And like I said, Elvis Fields is somebody who I think, you need to look at. But at the same time, him being somebody that has done this or whatever the case may have been, or possibly done this, I think he deserves a fair trial. And if the prosecution or the state is withholding the defense's main, defense, which is, hey, we think these other people had more to do with this case or this incident than what Richard Allen did, I think that should be allowed. And I think this is what that trial is for tomorrow. And I am feeling comfortable about it, to be honest with you. But let's read this. Let's continue. I think it's on this one right here. All right, so let's continue this. So this one says here, Delphi murder hearing Tuesday to discuss length of trial, terms, and names banned during jury selection. A critical hearing is set for May 7th ahead of the Delphi murder trial for Richard Allen, the 2017 killings of Libby German and Abigail Williams. The judge is set to consider two issues paramount to the trial: the length and what terms might be banned during the jury selection. The defense team for Allen warned the judge trial could go past when it's scheduled to last. Currently, the trial is scheduled from May 13th to May 31st. They only gave 2 weeks for this. That's crazy. The attorneys argued that the prosecution previously said that witnesses listed 118 people and 93 exhibits. The defense argues that the sheer scope of all those witnesses could last the entirety of the scheduled time trial. The defense said that its sides with the case would take a couple of weeks to present and had more than 70 witnesses. The defense also points to challenges with Allen needing to be transported to and from the courthouse each day, and the same with the sequestered jurors. The defense stated that the court's approach to such retrial schedule infringes upon the defendant's Allen's Sixth Amendment rights and underscores the need for the court to conduct a scheduling hearing regarding the trial. The defense argues there should be a pre-trial hearing to discuss how long the trial should last. Let's see, where does it go and talk about the other stuff? That's the one I wanted to talk about. All right, here it is. So prosecutors sent the request to the judge terms explaining terms that could be seen as an attempt to indoctrinate the jury. The state argues hypothetical questions, including facts that are not in evidence, could mislead the jury, create prejudice or confusion. The terms include odinism, cult, or ritualistic killings, and the names of people listed in court documents throughout the investigation or as witnesses. Now, is this just during the jury selection that can't bring up this stuff? Or is it throughout the entire trial? See, because it says right here, one, certain terms banned from the defense's team during jury selection. I mean, during jury selection, if they're banned from saying those things, I think that helps out. That could help out Richard Allen. Because if they can't bring up those things and say, hey, are you aware of Odinism or cults or any of those things that may have played a role in this? If you can't even ask that question, then when somebody comes up, I mean, they might be somebody who's familiar with those things one way or the other, including somebody who watches or who's informed in this case, who might think that Odinism is really what happened and that Richard Allen is innocent. So it's interesting. Now, I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not entirely sure if this is just for the jury to select them, or if this is also throughout the trial. If you guys know that, let me know. Let's see. I'll look through because I thought it was throughout the entire trial, because I know there was some other stuff, and I'm not 100% familiar with the Delphi case. I'm still kind of, going through it. I know the gist of everything. I just haven't gone through everything like I have, like, for instance, in the Idaho case. But all right, so it says here, Allen's attorneys have claimed several people with direct ties to Odinism were dismissed as potential suspects early on in the investigation into the killings without reason. For reference, the Anti-Defamation League defines Odinism in the following way. Odinism is a term frequently given to a racist variant of Norse pagan religion known as Astru. I can't even pronounce that word. Is a religious sect that attempts to revive ancient Norse religious beliefs and practices of pre-Christian Europe. Astru is not itself a racist religion, though some white supremacists consider themselves Astrucist. Odinism is sometimes referred to as wantonism. It tends to be popular among white supremacist inmates. Will the Delphi trial be televised? I do not think so. I think that they're not doing that. Yeah, CJK said, good question. I'll see if I can find out. I also thought during the entire trial. See, that's the way I took it. And if it was during that, if it's just during the jury selection, I don't got a problem with it. That's a huge component of what's to come, during the trial, in my opinion. But if it's during the entire trial, if they're not allowing them to use that as a defense, I find that to be, that's some baloney. I'm not going to lie. I don't like that. I don't like that at all. Not one bit. And this is coming from somebody who I think he may have done something there. I think he may have been involved. And my thing is, if this guy did it and you arrested him and you say you got the evidence to back it up, then back it up. You don't need to silence anybody else. Don't matter what he says. Like even in the Koberger case, don't hide any of the evidence. You don't have to do that. Give them what they want. Now, I know in that situation, it's more because, and part of it is because he hasn't given his alibi and he wants to use as an alibi as a defense. And there's a possibility that he can, create one based on, if he knows exactly what they know about his locations, and that he can create something that could fit a timeline that would put him somewhere else, I guess. I don't know. But, if he had said, hey, I was at the Wawa Park from, 3:30 to 4:30 or whatever the case may be, and that's where I was at, then yeah, I'm not, you give them everything. I've never been one to try to, sway one side or the other because I want one side or the other to win. No, I want, if they're going to take somebody's life or freedom away, you better have the evidence and the proof and everything else to go along with it. And so in this situation here, if those guys truly had nothing to do with it and you can prove it, you have evidence that shows that, Holder was somewhere else at work or at the gym and the other guy was somewhere else as well. Well, bring that into evidence. Like, look, this wasn't them because of this. You know what I mean? Don't try to, I don't like this secrecy stuff. I don't like it. It don't sit right with me. Let's see. I hate the trend of no video audio for trials. A trial is public, and today's time, the idea of public is more widespread than local community. I agree. You know, I don't understand why the trial has to be not aired or televised. Now, I understand the pre-trial stuff, like the May 14th, trial with Brian Kober, or if any of these, pre-trial hearings were completely blocked. I'd understand that. You don't want certain information that or evidence that may or may not be used against, a defendant out there. Like, for instance, the Miss Allen has talked about doing having where they're going to suppression hearings. So we don't know exactly what they're suppressing, but if they go into great detail, like let's just say it's the phone pings, and we find out that they say that they think Brian Koberger was 20 feet away from the house on 5 occasions for X amount of hours, and it comes back that they can't use that in court. Well, that information is out there, and that information is out there that we know that that's what the police think and know. And so that could hurt a jury going into it, right? Especially if they hadn't heard that, or if that's something that they had heard, then they don't bring it up in court and they just kind of assume that it's real. You know what I'm saying? Or that it was, real, that's what they're supposed to use. And then you end up having somebody found guilty on evidence that wasn't admissible, if that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. So these are things that are in benefit of the defendant, not necessarily the state. Let's see. Canadian True Crime Buff comes in with 5 Drunk Turkey Show memberships. Thank you so much. We appreciate that. What you was told, no trial evidence can be used during jury selection. So just for jury selection, apparently. Good deal. That is good deal. All right, that's good, because I didn't like that. No Odinism, no stuff like that. At first, I thought that was for the whole trial. The fact that that's just for this jury selection, all right, that's good, because that means that during the trial, we're going to hear that evidence. And, me as a person who wants the truth, right, and the right person to go, if there is something that says that other people were involved, well, then we need to look into that as well. But, if somebody has this defense and it doesn't matter, the evidence is still stronger, and they have this defense that comes up, and the prosecution can prove that that's not what happened. And it just makes, in my opinion, for a stronger conviction. Now, if you try to silence this man now and don't let him say those type of things, I think that there is a place where it would get overturned in appeals. And so that conviction wouldn't be as solid. So you want a strong conviction. You want one that's going to last through an appeal. So you're not going to want to silence him on certain things like that, especially since it's been a big topic. Now, maybe that's why, Indiana wants to, not have cameras in there, because they think that even if they get a conviction, there could be an appeal, and that I don't know. I mean, that's going like 5D on it, though. That showing of that initial hearing would have some effect on any appeal courts or retrial later. I don't know. I think that's too much. Let's see. In the O.J. Simpson trial, the jury saw a very different trial than the TV audience. We saw the sidebars, and the jury didn't. That's true. Now, that's kind of like one of the reasons why I think that it's important, if you can get out there and actually watch it from inside, the courtroom, because you can actually see everything, and there's nothing that's being hidden from you. There's nothing that is being censored, things like that. And I think that when the Brian Koberger case comes in, I think I'm going to try to make it out to that one. This one here for Delphi, I don't know. It's too close. It's a little close. I didn't expect it to come up on us this fast as far as the trial goes, but we'll see. Hopefully we have some, if you all are there, if somebody's going to be there, wants to give us some information, help us out, tweet us or email us. what's going on in trial. If you're there, we'd love to hear from you and get your first person account from inside the courtroom. Make sure to hit me up. I would appreciate it. So yeah, that's what we got for today, guys. If you guys have any questions or anything like that, I'll be on here for the next probably 5 minutes or so. It don't have to be about these two specific cases. If you have any questions about Brian Koberger's case, the guys, myself, or Rogan's party, little Rogie, she has a party coming up. She's gonna be turning 1 pretty soon. In the description and in the live chat pin is a link to, if you want to, buy her something. We're gonna have a party on the live chat, probably on Mother's Day, I think, or maybe the day after. Rogan will be a part of it. She's gotten a lot of stuff, so I'm probably not going to bring out all the stuff that she's gotten, but I will be thanking everybody individually there that has gotten her anything, and I will be showing what they got her, and we have some pictures also to show. And like I said, Rogi's going to come out and probably do a little happy birthday thing with her, so I look forward to that. She's about to be 1, y'all. It's crazy how fast time has gone. It's very crazy. All right, let's see. Libby says, I don't believe it's respectful to give other creators info while listening to you, but in this case, because you said you weren't very familiar with Delphi, I listened to Kendall Ray. She has family interviews. Oh, interesting. I've never heard of her. Thank you. I will look into Kendall Ray. Let's see. Brian Kober and Richard Allen should switch judges. Yeah, maybe. I was thinking about something that it escaped me. Never mind. When both of these cases are all said and done, or in the beginning, let me put it this way: in the beginning, I thought that the Brian Kober case with the PCA was a little weak, and I thought that Richard Allen's case was rock solid because of the timeline and everything else. As time progresses, I have basically flip-flopped on both of them. Not saying that Richard Allen's case is weak. I do think that given the Odinism stuff, and not just that, but the fact that law enforcement lost a lot of things like interviews and stuff, I fear in that case there may not be justice. I do think that Richard Allen has something to do with it. I do think that I do think he's involved. However, because the ball was dropped so badly by law enforcement in that situation, they could have had him early on, right? He went and spoke to them day one. They could have had him, day 1, day 5, whatever. But they were, tunnel focused on other persons, and now it just looks kind of bad. And I feel that when it comes to a jury, I think it might be kind of difficult to convince all of them that there wasn't something more to this. And that one I'm kind of worried about. And when it comes to the Brian Koberger case, where I was kind of iffy on, just kind of understanding the PCA more. A lot of people ask me, why'd you change your mind or whatever? And the first thing was Howard Bloom. And he came out saying that the amount of skin cells or whatever it was, the DNA that was on the knife sheath, wasn't detected at first. And it wasn't detected until they sent the sheath to Othram. They found the sample because they used something to fill in the gaps for DNA that is degraded or something like that. And all of that ended up being false. The Idaho State Lab found it. What was the nothing burger was when they entered it into CODIS and it came back linked to no one. That's the nothing burger. It wasn't that there was no hit. They didn't find no DNAs. They found it. It just didn't have anything in CODIS. Now, when they sent it to Othram, what they did there was they were attempting to start the S&P profile to create the IgG. Once the FBI got involved and they took over that, they sped up the process. They ended up finding out who Brian Koberger was and said, hey, Moscow Police Department, we can't tell you 100%, but you might want to look at this guy. And so Moscow PD had to go and create their case against him, because you can't just arrest somebody on somebody saying, hey, go look at this guy. The FBI didn't get the DNA off the sheath and the S&P profile and compare them together for a match. You can't do that. The only way you can do that is if you go and, get Brian Koberger's DNA off his, cheek and then compare them, which they eventually did. And that came back as like 5 octillion time, that was his, which tells me that it was probably a lot more cells than we think it was, as far as the amount of DNA, given how strong of a match it was to him. They couldn't be, you'd have to go to another solar system in another dimension or something like that to find somebody else, right? And so that's kind of when things started to change for me. Also, understanding the probable cause affidavit, it's written weird. I've said this from the beginning. It's written odd. It's hard to understand. It seems to me that parts of it were written at different parts of the investigation and then all put together. Now, does that mean that the investigation itself was shoddy? No. When it comes to, because I've heard the argument where somebody will say that, well, if the probable cause, affidavit was written so poor, then, they assume that the case is the same way. And typically it's not. I mean, they were trying to get this guy off of the streets as fast as possible. He was accused of committing a quadruple homicide. You don't want those type of dudes on the street just kind of, free and willing to do, able to do it again, right? So get him off the streets as fast as possible, go through a bunch of your stuff. But when it comes down to the actual presentation of this case, I think a lot of people are going to be stunned with the amount of evidence they have. At least that's what I'm hearing. Well, let's see. I'm going to go through who's Darnell Brooks. Daniel, did you see Darnell Brooks' black eye today? I don't know who Darnell Brooks is. Who's Darnell Brooks? I've listened to both sides on BK and cannot see the opposite side's view on the evidence. Do you feel the same way? Sirius asks. In the beginning, yes. So the cast information or the fact that he didn't connect to a tower, or he connected to a tower in Moscow but wasn't in Moscow, initially it comes off as if the locations are inaccurate, but that's not what it says. And I wish they would have put more effort into it. And if they would have said that, something to the effect like it connected to a tower in Moscow and we knew that it wasn't in Moscow because the strength of the signal aligned with the other, towers in the area, told us that he was outside of the Moscow city limits, but still connected to a tower in there, because that's basically what I assume that they're saying with that. But they don't put it that way. They make it so much more difficult. And when you're reading things fast sometimes and you're trying to get all this information in when it's breaking out, some things can be misunderstood. And like I said, even I made the same mistake in that. And it took me to read it again and then say, oh, you know what? That's not what it says. Same thing with the latent footprint. A lot of people think that there's only one footprint there. And that's not the case. They only speak of one footprint because it corroborates what Dylan is saying. What Dylan said was that she saw the masked man walk out towards the sliding glass door, and that's how he exited. And they're corroborating that with a latent footprint because before a footprint become latent, it's visible, right? You step in blood, and you take another step, that print is visible. Another one, it's less visible, until eventually it's no longer visible from the naked eye. And if it's one of the ones that are not visible from the naked eye, that means it's obviously not one of the first prints. It's one of the last prints that was left. And if it's one of the last prints and it's facing the direction in which Dylan says, that corroborates that footprint was the last one and it was walking towards the direction of the exit, corroborating what she saw. And it could easily be explained that way. They could have easily said there were multiple footprints, but because we had a latent footprint heading that direction, this is the one why we think Dylan's story is true. Then, a lot of people would understand that better, but they don't. They make it super hard to understand. And, that document wasn't meant for us to understand. That document was meant for a judge to read and decide whether there was enough evidence there to arrest this person. And so, that's the other thing we need to keep in mind when we read the defense's articles, and this is something that I had spoken about with Big Blue last time, when they were talking about how Brian Koberger likes to stargaze and all this other stuff, where, they were going into it as a storytelling format. Brian Koberger longed for drives and nights and hikes and runs and whatever the case may be, right? It sounded more like a Tinder profile than a court document. And as I asked Blue, I was like, who do you think is the targeted audience? Do you think that's the judge? You think that they're trying to attract the judge by reading it like a story? Or do you think they're trying to capture an audience who's looking for anything to say that he's innocent? I think it's the latter. I appreciate that, Bushi. Let's see. I don't know who had a black eye. Did somebody get in a fight? But all righty, guys, we're about that hour mark. I appreciate everybody in, and somehow we ended up at the night with talking about the VK case. It always works out that way. I appreciate everybody. I'll be back again probably on Wednesday, if not Thursday. Y'all please hit that like and subscribe button, ring that notification bell if you haven't done so already. Even if you don't like the if you're on the opposite side of the aisle, let me know in the comment section why you think that way. On any of the topics, whether it's Brian Koberger, Richard Allen, Mica Miller, John Paul Miller, let me know what your thoughts are. Without further ado, guys, I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.